This lesson is about the exterior grounds. The grounds are the area around the house, including driveways and sidewalks. But the most important thing we have to deal with is the grade going to the house. That grade can force water up next to the house and possibly penetrate the basement, causing wet basements. So let's get on with it.
Now that we completed the exterior wall inspection, I'm going to show you how to perform an exterior ground inspection. Specifically, we're going to talk about the foundation of the home. How is the grading? Is it a positive slope away from the home? We're going to be looking at decks. We're going to be looking at patios. We're going to be looking at walkways. And also we're going to be looking at driveways. So, one of the items that we're referring back to our check sheet is what type of material is the foundation? Is it block? Is it poured? Do we have visibility? In some areas, we're going to have vegetation against the foundation. So we're not going to be able to see it. You're not going to be able to crawl in there or pull the material out. You're just going to highlight the inability to view those sections. Here we have a gutter system with an extension. And as you can note, we have a nice positive grade away from the home. This is what we want to see. So when the rainwater comes off the house, it goes to the extension and it's going to flow away from the home. So the possibility of water pooling against the foundation is significantly reduced. So as we continue walking, we're going to be looking at the patios, the walkway, and the driveway. Now let's take a look at this patio. This is a stamped concrete patio. As you know, there are many types of patios. You have pavers, patio blocks, general concrete, and then here we have stamped concrete. What we're looking at is the overall material, but more specifically, the condition of it. We're looking for cracks. So we're going to be looking at our check sheet, marking down the material. We're going to observe the entire patio surface, looking for cracks. Is there any unevenness? Has anything been heaving? Because when it comes to patios, what we want to understand, is there any safety conditions? Is there any tripping points in which someone can fall and get hurt? As we look at this is in great shape. This has been cleaned and sealed a few times. So it encourages to me that the person is taking care of it. We notice that there is a positive slope away from the home. So the likelihood of pooling water going toward the foundation is reduced. Now that we have a patio in the front of the house, it actually continues to the walkway. And we want to understand the overall condition. So here we understand that this is stamped concrete, and they continued it on here. So one of the things that we want to do is you're going to want to walk up and down this walkway. The purposes of walking it up and down the walkway is to understand what is the overall condition. Do you feel like, are you sloping? Are there any depressions? Here you can notice that we have some vegetation that's growing up in between a crack. What that means, over time, that vegetation can get larger and start deteriorating that section of it. And also, especially in areas where you have snow, snow can get in there, it melts, freezes, so you have that freeze-thaw cycle, which can also deteriorate those locations. So as we walk, we're going to walk up and down the walkway. But here, you can notice that we actually have some exposure of the foundation wall. So let's take a look at that. So what we're going to be specifically looking for as long as this foundation, this is a parge coating that's on the block foundation. We want to understand, are there any significant cracks? Is there any deterioration of the foundation? Anything that we see on the outside, we want to say to ourselves, we got to look inside the basement. We want to understand if there is a crack, is there water penetration on the inside? All right, so we're going to look at this now. Just because we have a block foundation here, it doesn't mean we can't have a poured foundation. So for each of the types of foundations and the material, you always want to have a running list of those defects in your head. Now that we're sitting right here, I don't know if you can notice, we actually have a termite pod. This particular home has been remediated for termites. So they put these pods in the ground, and then they put a piece of wood and then they note where the termites are biting. They take out the wood, and then they put in the poison. Some companies automatically start with the poison. So you want to understand when you're walking around the home and getting into the foundation, sometimes you want to be, not sometimes, all the time, you want to understand if there's termites. And you're going to be looking for specifically for these pods. Now that we looked at the foundation, we looked at the patio, we looked at the walkway, we're going to go back to our check sheet and we're going to be looking at the driveway. So let's go check it out. Now let's inspect the driveway. One of the first things that you have to understand is that a driveway never becomes a major defect. It can never really kill a deal. It may be unsightly, it may be cracking, all right? It may be deteriorated. The resolution of it is that they can tear up the driveway and put stone, because that's what brand new houses have. What you want to understand is the deterioration. Could it be a safety defect? The breaking of the driveway, could it be a safety defect? Because there's so much walking up and down the driveway, the possibility of someone getting injured is high. Now, of course, everybody wants a nice driveway. And of course, you want to make sure that there's no cracks, no trees close to the driveway, that the root system is lifting it up. But specifically, when we're looking at our check sheet, we're looking at the material that is used. So here we have asphalt. And then we just want to identify, are there small cracks? Are there large cracks? Are there deterioration? And typically in the areas where they have snow, you may see deterioration of the end of the driveway because of the plows coming by. And that's just the fact of life. That's just how it's going to be. People are going to try to fix it, but if you have the plows and the salt that's come down, you'll see a higher deterioration in those locations. So again, looking at the material of the driveway and the overall condition of the driveway, and that's how you perform it. Now that we covered all the elements of the exterior ground, let's go take a look at the deck to finish it up. One particular item that we're going to inspect is a deck. Now, when we look at a deck, there are multiple things that we need to look at. First, we need to look at the footer. Second, we need to look at the post. Third, we need to begin looking at the ledger along with if there's any flashing. Fourth, we need to look at the beams. Fifth, we need to look at the joists. Thereafter, we're going to look 6 and 7, we're going to look at the guardrails, handrails. Then we're going to move on to the stairs treads, and the stringers. So let's get after it. Now, let's take, for example, right here, this footer and post. As you can see, we have a concrete footer. Typically, it goes about 4 feet down. And then we have a bracket that's supporting a 6 by 6 pressure treated post, which is then supporting our beam. What we want to look at is the overall condition. So when we want to get in here, now this is something that we do definitely get dirty, depending on the height of the deck, and for your safety, you can be crawling underneath here. Some guys actually just wear their clothes, or somebody might put a Tyvek suit on just to keep themselves clean because you haven't entered the home yet. So here you just want to look at the overall condition. There's no deterioration. This 6 by 6 feels pretty solid. I usually take the blunt end and I just kind of feel it overall. Now this is going to be my standard. I want to take this image of the footer and this image of the post and now go all the way around. So what's going to happen is we're going to crawl in here, okay? And again, you're going to look at each individual support or a footer. You're going to be looking at the post, and we're going to go along over here, and then we're going to look at all these individual posts. Now, sometimes you're going to take note that you may find a 6 by 6 post, then maybe find a 4 by 4 foot post, or maybe you're going to find a steel post, or maybe a tree trunk or a rock, which is kind of a non-standard. We don't get involved into the construction or architectural of the deck. We're just to see if it's secure and sturdy. Now, what I'm going to do next is we're going to go look at the ledger and the flashing. let's take a look in here. So here we have our ledger board, and we're going to take note that this has been lag bolted in, which is proper, because if you have nails, the possibility of the ledger board separating from the house is a possibility. We can see that we have proper flashing, so what ends up happening is rainwater from the exterior is going to fall on here, so rainwater will not fall behind the sheathing and the ledger board and or on top of it. Also, we're going to note that we have bracing for each of the joists, which we want to see. Typically, we don't want to have them toe-nailed in there without bracing, because then, again, we can have separation. So what you're going to do is you're going to look at this, and then you're going to walk crawl all the way along the base, only if you have access and you feel safe. Now, the next item we're going to look at are the beams. Now that we looked at the ledger and the flashing, we saw the concrete footer with the 6x6 inch post. Now we're going to look at these beams. Again, we want to see if this is sturdy all the way around. You want to make sure. This will be a little difficult, so let's take a look in here. As you can see, possibly right over here, you have the joining of the beams directly center over the 6x6 post, which is then lag bolted. I'm not seeing any deterioration. I see that it's proper with the flat washers and the lock washers, so that looks fantastic. Also, I'm looking at the levelness overall, because as you know, depending on the footer and how deep they can go, especially on the location here out in the Northeast, you can have heaving and thawing of the ground because of the cold temperatures. So we would crawl all the way along each of the beams on this side and the other side. Thereafter, you're going to look at the individual joists. You're going to go through and look at these individual joists. You're looking for that deterioration, possibly wood destroying insects. Again, the whole point is you're not looking at the construction. So some contractors put bracing in between the joists. We don't judge, because quite honestly, I can build a deck using 2x4s that'll be as sturdy as a properly code compliance deck. So again, that's one of the most important parts. We're not looking at code and compliance, because honestly, every area has different sections. Now that we have looked at one, the footer, the post, the ledger with the flashing, the beams, and the joists, now we're going to go on the outside of the deck and look at the decking, the guardrails, handrails, the stair stringers, and the treads. So let's get to it. Now that we inspected everything underneath the deck, the actual structure, let's get on top of the deck. So we're going to be looking at the stair system. Particularly, we're going to be looking at the stringers, the handrails, and the treads. So what we're going to do is we're going to walk up and down the treads. And the point is we're trying to see if it is soft, and do we feel like we're falling forward? Because remember, we're going to have children and an elderly walking up and down. Also, you can pull out your torpedo level and then look at the overall level, and you can see that we actually have a negative slope, and when I was walking down, I felt like I was kind of falling forward. One of the defects could be that maybe the supports underneath the posts and the stringers, which are here, maybe it's actually sinking in the ground, which gives us that feeling. Next, and remember, we're always going back and referring to our checklist to make sure that our standards of practice were not negligent in any way. The next item we're looking at to see if the handrails are sturdy, which they are. But you notice the gap between the balusters? It's a little greater than 4 inches. That's our standard that we use. We want to have balusters about 4 inches apart, and the reason why is it doesn't allow a small child's head or a small child to be able to fall through. So we're going to note that these balusters are a little greater than 4 inches apart, and we want to be able to put that into our checklist. So overall, we have a little bit of softness in the treads. We felt that the stair system is leaning forward a little bit, so that'll be another defect. And the balusters are a little greater than 4 inches apart. Next, we're going to get into the decking and also the guardrails overall. Now that we've finished with the stair system, what we're going to do is look at the guardrails, the handrail, and the overall decking. So first, we're going to gingerly take the post and try to push it back and forth. We just want to take it and see if we have anything. And so far, that's not too bad. That's kind of standard. So let's take a look at this one. Now we're getting a little bit more movement. So if we come over here, so this is definitely loose. Now there's multiple ways you can fix this. And again, we're not here to resolve the problem. We're just here to identify it. So on our check sheet, we would place that we have a loose handrail. And a loose handrail may lead, it's considered a safety hazard because it can lead to personal injury if you have more people on here. So what we're going to do is check these guardrails, and then we're going to check the guardrails all around the decking. Now, all decks, okay, are going to have some sort of, the staining is going to be fading. As you can see, we're going to have some debris because of the leaves and things of that nature. So of course, decks need periodic maintenance. Periodic maintenance will increase the longevity of the deck system on top and also on the bottom. So you can definitely state that this deck here is going to need to be pressure washed and then have staining on. All right. Now, when we look at debris, we want to take note of that because as you can see right over here in the corner, we're coming off the garage. We have noted some gutters, but there's a large amount of debris here and staining. So we want to push this away. And the reason why we want to push this away is the possibility, even though this is pressure treated, all right, there could be deterioration of the pressure treated. So we want to take our screwdriver. I don't use a blunt force. I just take the bottom end. And I'm just going through and just to see if there is any deterioration in there. And we would notice if there was any deterioration when we're crawling along the ledger also, because we're always looking at the back side of the deck itself. So, and also we want to take note of that we have a porch, an enclosed porch on top of this deck, which we will discuss when we get into the general interior section for the top side. All right. Now, as we continue over, one way we test the sturdiness of a deck is you're going to place yourself parallel with the house, and what you're going to do is gingerly try to see if you can shift it back and forth. And then we want to go in the opposite direction. And as you may not know, but I feel the deck is not moving. If we have a deck that has movement, that means we have an issue with the structure underneath. Now, one thing we always want to take note is we can tell if there is movement in the deck in the corner of the guardrails. So let's look over here. We can note that we have a 45 angle joint right here, a miter joint. Now, and we can notice that down here, we also have it. Now, this separation here and here, I would say it contributes to overall shrinkage of the wood. But if there was a significant gap in between these miter joints, that means the footers underneath there are sinking or there's some sort of movement. And that's how we tell with a deck if it is unlevel. You can take a 4-foot level and place it on the deck itself. But overall, if you want to know if there's any movement in the deck, is by looking at these 45 angle joints, these miter joints. So let's recap. The most important part of a deck is we're going to be looking at the footer, post, ledger, flashing, looking at the beams, looking at the joists, looking at the stair system, the railings, the stringers. Then we're going to be looking at the guardrails. We're going to be looking at the balusters. And again, very similar to the stair system, we have approximately 4 inches, greater than 4 inches. And then we're going to look at the overall deck structure itself to see if there's movement. And that is how you perform a deck inspection.
In this module, you will learn standards of practice for inspecting the exterior grounds, performing a grading and landscaping inspection around the foundation, window wells, topological grades, trees and vegetation, decks and porches, driveway, walkways, and patios. As a home inspector, you will have to visually inspect the entire exterior grounds of the house. The inspector will inspect grading, landscaping, window wells, driveways, porches, decks, retaining walls, and material used to construct these items. This lesson will cover the requirements for the exterior inspection process. The exterior grounds inspection will report on exterior conditions that either affect the structure of the house or pose a safety issue. For example, cracks in the walkway, low overhanging tree limbs, etc. Home inspectors shall observe and report the following site conditions. 1. The building perimeter for land grade and water drainage directly adjacent to the foundation. 2. Trees and vegetation that adversely affect the residential building. 3. Walkways, steps, driveways, patios, and retaining walls. Home inspectors are not required to observe and report on the following site conditions. 1. Fences and privacy walls. 2. The health and condition of trees, shrubs, and other vegetation. 3. Recreational facilities such as pools, spas, or play sets. Note that pools and other recreational equipment is beyond the scope of a home inspection, but pools without fences, alarms, and/or self-latching gates pose an inherent safety risk and should be reported to the client as such. When inspecting the exterior grounds of a house, pay close attention to the grading and landscaping around the foundation. Improper or negative grading and landscaping around the house may impact the function of the weepers and result in compromising the integrity of the foundation due to water infiltration. The effects of grading around a newly built house and an existing house are different. For newly built houses, the grading around the house is backfilled and over time will begin to settle, sloping toward the house. This will develop into a swale, allowing rainwater to pool directly against the foundation. For existing houses, a less severe slope is acceptable as settling of backfill has likely occurred already. As long as the grade appears to be directing water away from the foundation or positive grade, the grade is acceptable. Rule of thumb: the grading against the house should slope at least 10% away, a 1:10 ratio, from the foundation structure. For newer homes, even a larger percentage of slope or positive grading should be allowed as the area of earth for approximately 2 to 3 feet from the house is entirely backfill and prone to settle. A window well is a structure that provides a space between the grading and basement window. There are several functions of a window well. Window wells: 1. Allow the installation of a basement window even with high grading against the foundation wall. 2. Allow sunlight into the basement. And 3. Allow an egress from a living space in the basement. As you will see in the following diagrams below, all surface water must drain away from the house. Preferably, water should be drained into a swale, which usually runs on the property line, acting as a shallow ditch, usually running toward a country ditch or drain catch basin. This properly drains the rainwater from the property and allows the weeper system at the bottom of the foundation to gather any excess water that has accumulated around the footing. The accumulated water around the foundation footer is then discharged into a sump pump basin. Here are more examples of proper and improper grading. As a home inspector, there are a few considerations when observing trees and shrubs near and or around a foundation of a house. Trees and shrubs look for moisture to grow. What better place for them to look for moisture than drainage tiles or weepers around the base of the foundation? Where the limbs of a tree ends is where the root system of a tree ends. As the roots grow, they will begin to destroy the weepers, allowing dirt and small stones to enter. This will create a dam, which will result in water backing up and contacting the foundation. Question: as a home inspector, why would you be interested in decks and porches? Answer: safety concerns and or hazards. As a home inspector, you are not inspecting the deck or porch to determine if the structure satisfies the area's municipal codes and standards. Even if you may know a few codes, you don't know all municipal codes and standards, and should always refrain from mentioning codes during all phases of a home inspection. Question: what is the difference between a deck and a porch? Answer: porches are nothing more than a deck that is covered. Some porches may be screened in, or in some cases, they might have windows. As an inspector, you will want to be sure to check the following areas. Consider the same inspection standards for a porch roof as a standard roof inspection. Depending on the material used for the pillars, you will want to check the top and bottom of the pillar for wood rot. These areas are prone to deterioration due to constant exposure to the elements. Is there a porch skirt that allows for adequate airflow? Decks and porches, like most things in a house, can be as simple as a small rectangle or as complicated as a designer wants it to be. Regardless of the style, there are similarities to every deck and porch. Areas of concern for inspectors will vary somewhat with each design, although there are 5 areas that are common when inspecting decks and porches: footer, ledger board, stairs, top of railings, and balusters. Step 2. Inspect the ledger board. How is the deck or porch attached to the house? Look for cracking and determine if the board is separating from the house. How is the ledger board fastened to the house? Lag bolts, the proper fastening device, or screws or nails. Step 3. Inspect the stairs. Residential stairs should be built in a way that ensures people of all ages can navigate them comfortably. An angle between 20 and 38 degrees is recommended. How are the stairs fastened to the deck and/or porch? Is there any play or movement? Are the stairs uneven, maybe due to the season? Jiggle the handrails to determine if they move. They should be solid with no play. Step 4. Inspect the railing. Inspecting the railing will help determine if the deck or porch has moved. Look at the corner of the railing and evaluate if the miter joint is separated. This is an indication of movement. Is there a safety rail? Is the distance between the deck and the ground an unsafe height above the grade? Refer to Megan's Law. A railing system is essential if the deck is at an unsafe distance above grade level. Step 5. Inspect the balusters. Are any loose? Are there any missing? Are the balusters spaced above a maximum of 4 inches apart? When developing the story for a deck and/or porch, there are a minimum of 4 pictures needed. 1. Overall picture of the structure. 2. Underneath, show the ledger board, fastening mechanism, and hangers for the joists. 3. Footer example. And 4. Railing corner and condition of the deck. When inspecting a driveway, walkway, or patio, there are 4 questions you must ask. 1. What material is the driveway, walkway, or patio made of? 2. What is the overall condition? 3. Are there any tripping elements that may lead to a safety hazard? And 4. Are there any depressions? As a home inspector, it is important to understand the safe distance for the electrical service lateral. These heights are illustrated below. If these minimum distances are not met, the condition is classified as unsafe. A retaining wall is a structure designed and constructed to resist the lateral pressure of soil when there is a desired change in ground elevation that exceeds the angle of repose of the soil. Per SOPs, a home inspector is not required to inspect a retaining wall. Take a few minutes to review the following checklist of exterior grounds items to inspect.
we talked about the exterior grounds around the house. There's many different elements that we talk about when we get into the grounds. You have the driveway, you have the walkway, there's shrubbery around the house, there's fences attached to the house. A lot of these things are important, but in my mind, the most important thing that we do when we're looking at exterior grounds is looking at the grade around the house. And that grade is either positive or negative. If it's positive, we tend to not find problems inside the house. But if it is negative, that's where all of our problems come from. Water penetration is the most important thing we have in terms of problems in the house, and when it comes to exterior grounds, that negative grade creates the water penetration into the basement. That's the one thing you need to take away from this chapter. Now, good luck with the test.